What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. As always, I am PK, alongside my co-host Phil for episode 289. Phil, we are trying out this new software. There are so many new buttons I can hit, so many new things I can screw up over here. Like, I can control so many sound effects. Let's see this. Phil, we have a brand new soundboard. Thank you. So there's going to be a lot of fine tuning these things, trying to make sure things are working correctly. That's why we waited till the off season to do all these. First time Phil and I can see each other, so this is going to be a rough go around seeing each other through the intro. We're still having our old software run in the background for the next few episodes just to make sure that we don't lose any episodes because, you know, knock on wood, we've never lost a full episode. We've lost your soundtrack. We kept mine, and it was PK just talks to himself. But fingers crossed. But Phil, it's a brand new, momentous occasion for the BSC here, being able to see each other 3+ years in. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, we gave you too much power with
very much so
letting you run this and be that side of everything. We'll see how it goes. There it is. So
I won't do that often.
No, it's exciting. And like you said on a previous episode, one of the big changes with this, not only being able to see each other, which is nice, but also hopefully it will get us to do more interviews, because if we can make this work for us, it's a simpler system to also throw out there to others. If we want them to be on the show, it's a little bit easier to just have them open a link. It's all online, and they don't need anything on their end software wise or anything like that. We don't have to ask them to download anything. So if this works really well, it's also a big step forward for us in terms of potential interviews and other things we can bring to the show. So a lot of kinks, I'm assuming. Hopefully it runs pretty smoothly early on, but we'll see how it goes. But weird and interesting and new.
Yeah, we've had interviews in the past, but the software we use for that now costs tons of money. So besides just investing in that and the other software we were investing in, we're just going under one giant umbrella that hopefully will do everything for us. So fingers crossed that all works right. But yeah, we got a big episode. My first Mad Matty Minute is on today's episode. We're going to be talking about our bold predictions that we had before the season even began. We'll go over what hit, what didn't. Not very many things did hit, so it should be a pretty quick thing there. And then Bill's schedule's been out for probably a few weeks now, and we haven't been able to touch on that because obviously the Bandits were in the playoffs winning a championship. So why would we divert to something that won't start till September when we're dealing with something right now in the moment? So remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com. We might not have much articles popping right now, but you can check out our store on our link tree, on our social media sites, or at the top of the website. Reed is currently telling you right now that you can go check it out. He's going to be wearing some merch pretty soon. Yeah, you can check on our website with that by hitting the shop tab. You can represent the BSC on the go and then look for the time breakdowns in the description of the show, as Reed's saying, yeah, let's get on with this one. But happy Pride Month to everyone out there. We are a safe space and a safe show for anyone and everyone out there. It's all love from us here at the BSC. I'm wearing my Pride shirt for the Buffalo Bisons right now. It's a very important month. Ignore the haters, ignore everybody in the comments, but I hate seeing a post from a team or an event or anything, and you're seeing 900, 1,000, 2,000 posts or comments on that post, and you know that 90% of them are just going to be negative. Don't even bother looking in the comments. Those people are behind the times. They're not going to be on the right side of history. We're a safe show here. We're a happy show here, and we are in full support of Pride Month on the BSC here.
Yeah, it's it's a great time, and like you said, I mean, more than anything, we're safe, and we are tolerant or supportive of everybody and everything, and whatever makes you happy, go out there and have a good time. It's nothing. It's not my business, not your business, and it's something that if if that's what you want to do and it makes you happy, then it makes us happy knowing that you're happy. So that's go enjoy Pride Month and have a good time. Be safe out there and whoop it up.
Yeah, what's definitely going to make everybody happy is the Mad Matty Minute. My wife Brooke did introduce, and not introduce, but she created the name of this one, and we're still working on a graphic for that. Producer Pat, get on it. But yeah, it'll pop up on the screen behind me whenever we have it. But every Wednesday moving forward until we get word on Mad Vince and his plans, yes, these offers that I'm about to put out to the world are legally binding. And if he does return for the three-peat, I will follow through with all these, and Steve Dietrich can work it into the contract however he wants. So my first one here. This is the first official Mad Matty Minute. Too many M's. Brooke did this just to hear me screw up. Here's the first one. The deed most pet owners absolutely hate. If you have a cat, Matt Vince, I will change their litter box. If you have a dog, I will go clean up the yard droppings. If you have a fish, I will clean the tank. If you have a hamster, I will clean out their cage. Any pet you currently have in your house, for your kids, your family, whatever it is, I will clean up their business for an entire year. You can put that into the contract, Steve Dietrich. That is my first Mad Matty Minute to try to convince and do our job to bring Matt Vince back for a three-peat.
Yeah, I'm the one who handles the cat litter in my house, and we did switch litters a while ago, so it's not nearly as daunting as it used to be. But it's no fun. You know, no one wants to do it. I'm, like, when it comes to that day and that time, and I'm not looking forward to it ever. So yeah, I mean, if he can take that off his plate and focus on lacrosse, or maybe that gives him that little bit of extra time to spend with his family, so then he can also spend some time with lacrosse. So I'll take it. I'll take it.
Phil's
It's a
thinking.
good start.
Phil's thinking.
Good start.
Yeah, imagine if you have a dog like that size right there. Imagine what he does in the backyard. I already have to clean that up. So, Matt Vince, if you have a dog that size, I'll clean up that job. I don't have to worry about it. So, yeah, that's our first Mad Matty Minute. This is all legally binding right now, and I'll do whatever I have to do to get Matt Vince back for the three-peat. So, Phil, let's dive into our next segment here. Buffalo Bandits, obviously going to be on every show. We're still the only podcast that covers them all year long, 365 days, whether we're talking about them or not. We're talking about them in our Facebook Messenger chats nonstop. So there's also a group for the Buffalo Bandits and everything like that too. So let's review our off-season predictions. We did update them, so you can go listen back to those shows on February 9th and February 12th. We did update those midway through the season. Sometimes we might not have wanted to because we should have just been a little bit more patient. I know one of the ones that Phil did update did hit for him. So let's dive into it. Let's go through the NLL predictions first. I'll cover mine. Phil will give his, and then we'll kind of dive into why we thought they were going to work out, and, you know, they might not have. My NLL predictions for the NLL season that just concluded. Jeff Teat was going to break the goal scoring record. Mitch Jones was going to be the league's MVP. I changed that to Westberg midway through the season. Yeah, there you go. And then Toronto will lead the league in scoring. I did change that to San Diego. Phil, I technically went 0 for 5 on this one. Jeff Teat did finish first, 58 of the 72 goals, so he was 14 behind, tying the record. Josh Byrne was the league MVP, and Buffalo finished first in goal scoring with 237. So I did not hit on mine. What were yours?
Yeah, I had the former East will finish top 3 in the standings of Buffalo, Toronto, Halifax. That missed pretty badly as far as teams. I mean, former East almost had 2/3, but did not have the correct 2/3. Nick DeMood winning goaltender of the year. He had a good year, and overall, I think he still had a solid contribution, and he was one of the best goalies in the league, but he did not win it. I did change it to Nick Rose, and he did get it, as he very well deserved. And then Riptide making the playoffs. There it is. I had Riptide making the playoffs after going 5-13. They finished 9th. They just missed. They were obviously 9th is, you know, 1 away from playoffs, and 8th. They finished 8-10, and Rochester also finished 8-10. So the team that did get in, they had the same record as them, but they also had the same record as the 12th place Vancouver Stealth. So there's a huge stack of 8-10 teams, and they just were not the one to sneak in. They were so close, though. 9th it was close.
Yeah, I mean, for me, just looking back on these ones, Jeff Teat That one, if I know start to the season, he definitely did struggle on one, getting points, and two, scoring the ball. And I think the whole team struggled as a whole. I think they started 0-3, 0-4, something like that, and then had to work their way back. So finishing 8-10 from where they started was pretty stinking good. But he still finished with 58 goals, led the league in scoring. I think eventually, if they do continue with this unified standings and the team does continue to improve, and now being in Ottawa and having more things at his the team's what the team's able to do because of the new environment. And I think Ottawa is going to be a much better environment for the team than New York City was. I think they're going to be able to pour more money into the team and improve that way. I think Jeff Teat in the future, possibly even in the near future, he could end up breaking Dane Smith's goal scoring record, even if that involves adding more games to the schedule. Josh Byrne, just an unbelievable season. Him and Dane Smith and Nick Rose, unbelievable. I thought too much of what I saw out of Mitch Jones once he got traded to Philly, and that kind of tailed off because Philly struggled so much. Their offense got hurt, their defense got hurt. They were giving up so many shots. So the having Philly finish where they did in the standings, Mitch Jones really had no chance. And then switching to Westberg, he was having a good season through February. I thought he probably got overshadowed too much with Austin Stotts scoring so much over there, and then Chris Irregolari just stood on his head back there. I think he was the MVP of that team. And then Toronto, I was blinded by the Mark Matthews, the Chris Boucher, and the Dan Littner addition to that team. I thought they were going to be one of the most unstoppable offenses we've seen. And I think I doubted too much of what I saw with the Buffalo's offense earlier in the season, where hey, they're still scoring, but their defense is struggling so much, and so on and so forth. I really thought this was going to be Toronto's year to take that extra leap and get into the finals. And yes, they did end up having to face Buffalo in the playoffs regardless. And you know what happens then. They can't get over that. They can't get the monkey off their back. But I think I was blinded by the Toronto fandom, quote unquote, that I have. But I thought these were going to work, and then midway through the season I was like, I gotta adjust on two of these. But it was definitely a bold take that didn't work out for me, and that's why they're bold takes, and I'm sticking. That's why we do this, Phil. We're not deleting the stuff from the internet. We're not trying to wipe clean of it. We stand on our bold predictions, whether they come true or not. I don't care. At the time, I thought they were going to hit, and that's why I said them.
Yeah, I mean they're bold for a reason, right? I mean, bold you really aren't expecting to hit in a way. I mean, they these aren't obvious takes or ones that you're hoping they hit for some of them, but I mean they're bold, which means that like stuff all has to fall perfectly in order for most of these to take place. So former East finishing the top three. I mean, Albany, if you saw them finishing in the top three after being 3-13 last year, congratulations. I don't think anybody in the world would have predicted that. So I did not get that one. I mean, Halifax finished sixth, so they didn't really help me out too much with the Buffalo, Toronto, Halifax finish. San Diego's always been good, so it was pretty easy to see them up there. I think I had them fourth originally in my standings, which we'll go over in a little bit. But I mean, having Albany out of nowhere, I wasn't going to get that one right after that. Demuth had a good year, nowhere near the MVP or goaltender of the year season. I was kind of expecting that step forward, but he still performed well. Changing that to Nick Rose was pretty easy at that point in the season, and he ran away with that award pretty easily. And then, like I already mentioned, the Riptide, a ton of teams finished 8-10. They were one of them. Rochester finished 8-10, got in. They finished 8-10 and did not make it. I think they still had a decent bounce back year. They did start the year 1-4, so bouncing back from 1-4 to finish 8-10. If they would have started, obviously, 2-3, they would have been in the playoffs most likely. But that rough start, that slow start by Teat and the entire team kind of sunk them pretty early. But stuck with it because I thought they still had a chance, and then they finished just outside of playoffs, so they were right there, but just missed it.
Yeah, we can move forward now. I mean, you hit the one you needed to, which was the switch and the Nick Rose going with the Triple Crown. So kudos to you. He had finished much better than I did. I think you finished much closer than I did in all of your predictions. I mean, I wasn't close. Jeff Teat was the closest one. He was still 15 goals behind, which is what, like 5 goals a game for 3 games. It wasn't going to hit. So kudos to you. You definitely did better, and I'm out for revenge next year. Let's move on to the standings and what it looked like in the standings. We did much better with predicting the playoff seeds. We might not have gotten the seeding right, but for me, my original prediction for making the playoffs, I hit 6 of the 8. And for you, your original, you hit 5 of the 8. With the updated, I hit 6 of the 8. You hit 6 of the 8. So I think for playoff prediction wise, I thought we did pretty good nailing down who we thought was going to actually make the playoffs. I mean, I'll just go over my going into the standings because I think that was more accurate and a bit more accurate than my updated ones. I had Buffalo as my 1, Toronto as my 2, San Diego 3, Halifax 4, Colorado 5, Calgary 6, Panther City 7, and Georgia 8. And it finished Toronto, San Diego, Albany, Buffalo, Georgia, Halifax, Panther City, and Rochester. So the only ones I really missed was Rochester. I had them as my 9th seed. And I missed Albany. I had them as my 15th seed. That one was the biggest miss I think both of us had. We both had them. Let me double check. I think we both had them as the 15 seed going in. On our updated ones, we both had them going into the playoffs. I think we did much better with that. Kudos to us, though. We both had and predicted the right champion, but we just both had Buffalo over Toronto. It did technically happen, just not in the finals. But I thought we did do better when it came to predicting what teams we saw making the top 8 in this first year of the unified standings.
Yeah, and that was always going to be tough, right? I mean, the unified standings kind of brought an entire different look to the NLL. I mean, like we talked about it throughout the entire year. Every single game was really, really big, and that every game is important mentality kind of came back to bite Buffalo a little bit and ended up being okay. Obviously, it worked out well in the end, but it's a lot of those head-to-head battles that ended up screwing up a lot of our standings and a lot of these really close ones. Again, what did I say, 5, 8, and 10 teams all fighting for that 8th place spot. It's going to come down to those head-to-head battles and all those millions of tiebreakers. And Rochester was the one out of the 5, 8, and 10 teams that stuck in and barely got in there. And then the rest of them, Panther City and up, they all had the kind of the record to get in there, but it's still Georgia and Halifax finishing with the same record, Buffalo, Albany, same record. So it's still, even above that, you have the unified standings, the, direct head-to-head tiebreakers that kind of switch things around. But I think for the most part, in a very, very tight, interesting standings and kind of system, I thought we did pretty good. I mean, 6 of 8, just missing 2, really not bad. Like you said, in the updated, we were both pretty close. I'm not sure who I met. Colorado, I still had too high. I thought they were going to bounce back at some point. They didn't. They did not bounce back at all. And then
New York was your other one.
Yeah, New York again. I still believe that they were going to be in it, and they were close, but still just out of it. Rochester did sneak in, but even wherever we were, I thought Buffalo, even with our updated ones, still had a shot to get all the way back to the top, and I truly believed that at the time. They just continued to suffer a little bit, but then they turned it around and did what they needed to do in playoffs and made it all work. But I think 6 of 8 is pretty good, especially with the Philly love that everybody was giving, and we had them buried in our rankings, and they finished where they deserved.
Yeah, I mean, for Philly, I had them 11th to start. I moved them down to 13th, and they finished in 13th. You had them 13 across the board, so we were low on Philly to start. Kudos to us. I think the biggest misses we had, obviously Albany, but everybody had Albany way low in their standings. We all knew that, hey, they were adding Alex Simmons. They were adding Ty Kurtz. They were on this team on the rise, but they needed to make that next step. And everybody was looking forward to, okay, Will Johansson's coming in and helping that back end. You got Dyson Williams that's going to be coming in the following year. They're a year away. And I think even their coaching and their whole team mindset was, hey, we're still a year away. We're playing with house money. Let's see what happens here. My biggest misses, besides the Albany one, because everybody missed Albany, was Colorado and Calgary. I think Colorado was affected more by their 2 straight runs to the finals and then losing Ryan Lee once again for the whole year. You didn't have Dylan Ward to start the year. You were kind of not aging out, but the bodies were just beaten up and tired from 2 straight seasons of it. Buffalo was able to withstand that better than Colorado was, and they just plummeted down all the way down to 15th. I think Calgary, my biggest knock on them before the season was they didn't have that go-to primetime scorer. Jesse King and Tyler Pace were great. And you had those complementary pieces, but they didn't have that go-to guy. They didn't have that primetime scorer, and their offense struggled. You have Christian Del Bianco, who had an amazing season. He might not have met the numbers that he did last year, but those ones were near impossible to hit. And then, I think I hit the nail on the head with them not being able to score. I just don't think I took it far enough where they ended up finishing 11th. And before we get your thoughts on the rest of it, let's dive into our first sponsor, and then you can talk about what your biggest miss was besides the Albany, which would be Tap That Tap Room.
Tap That Tap Room, I am scrolling down to, is at 363 Delaware Street in Tonawanda, New York. They are Buffalo's first women-owned self-pour bar. Featuring 30 consistently rotating taps, they offer a variety of beers, ciders, sours, seltzers, and malt beverages.
Now, Phil, we're once a week now, every Wednesday. So I'm going to need everybody, as soon as you start listening to this episode, and as soon as we start getting to the sponsor reads, get out your calendar. Get out your calendar on your phone, whatever it is. You got to mark down these dates because we're going to go so far in advance because you're not going to listen to us again until next Wednesday. This Wednesday, they got general trivia with Geeks Who Drink starting at 7:30. Thursday, they got karaoke starting at 7 o'clock. Saturday, they got live music with Hell Yeah at 7 p.m. And then we're going to plug this one early because it is Pride Month. Saturday, June 21st at 7:30, they got RuPaul's Drag Race with a drag show to follow. I know Brooke's going to bring me to that one. I'm sure she's going to try to get a whole crew of posse to try to reclaim our title of our what do you call it? The title that we just call ourselves. Like when we anoint ourselves, where we crown ourselves the champions, when we finish 7th in Schitt's Creek, we're going to try to take first in RuPaul's Drag Race. So if you have any questions on what we just talked about, or you forget anything, you can check out their Facebook page for all their posted events. And if you want to find out what they have on tap or what's on deck, check out tapthattaproom.com. Phil, let's talk back about the standings. What were your biggest misses besides the Albany one? Because everybody forgot about that one.
Yeah, it was also Colorado and Calgary. I think I don't know. Colorado's the biggest one that was just weird. I mean, I know they lost players again. They were injured again, but it's something they've been dealing with for 2 straight seasons now, is the injuries. And so to see them really just tank and fall off. I mean, last year it took a mediocre season and then they had a great finals and playoffs. I mean, they weren't a great team the whole season until about halfway through. They really started to pick it up, snuck into playoffs, and then had a dynamite playoffs to get all the way to the finals again with Buffalo. But throughout the season, they were only okay. They were decent. They had some injuries again. So I think we were just, the whole season, we were kind of waiting for them to kick it into gear like they did the year before. And that just did not happen. Not only did not happen, they just collapsed. I think when we were 5-6, the Bandits were 5-6, and a lot of people were like complaining and stuff like that. And it was the same thing where, it's like, okay, Colorado was also in the finals, and, look at them. They're, you could be last. And how about we just be happy that they've won at least 5 games and they're looking semi-okay, and give them a chance to turn it around. And we all know that Buffalo did and won 2 in a row, and Colorado went. I mean, just to see Buffalo win back-to-back, which Colorado almost did, or at least attempted to do, to see them fall all the way to last place is just like, the fall was just huge. I thought Ward had a little bit of a rough year, and now you got him for 5 years. So, I mean, there's a good chance he bounces back if the team can bounce back. But I don't know. There's a lot of question marks on that roster. Still a good roster, and one that might just need to get healthy. But that was by far the biggest miss. Calgary, the thing with them, and it's not that I don't agree with you about their offense. I do agree, but they've been like that for a while, right? Like that's who their team is. They're built from the back forward. They're built in transition. It's not a heavy offensive team. It's a heavy Christian Del Bianco transition defense kind of team.
I think what also hurt them was the loss of Dane Doby. And then you had the loss of Curtis Dixon. I think that finally just caught up to them.
Yeah. They didn't replace those 2 all-stars with anything. So yeah, I think it's easy to see now, and in the hindsight of things, that, okay, that clear, like you said, like you just didn't knock them down far as you should have. And I was assuming if they get anywhere near Christian Del Bianco MVP levels like they did, the year before, I thought that he was going to be able to carry them because a lot of the NLL is if you have a really, really good goalie, you have a shot to be a 500 or better team that can sneak into playoffs and make some noise. So I thought they were going to be a little bit closer to that. He still really had a good year. I mean, 10.65 goals against and an 80% save percentage. Again, we talked about it a lot. Anytime you have over an 80% save percentage in the NLL, you're looking at a really, really good season. So he had that going for him. Under 11 goals against, perfectly fine. So it definitely wasn't Christian Del Bianco, but like you said, the offense just wasn't there enough in those close games to get them over it. But same as you. I mean, I know it's a bit boring that we're talking about the same two teams, but those were by far our two biggest misses. And then headed into the season, Georgia being kind of on the fringe of things, and then seeing where they ended up finishing, they were a much better team than I think I did, much better than I gave them credit for. I know we saw what they did at the end of the season last year where they went on that run, and they were a team that was completely built from the back forward and pretty much, wherever Dobson went, they went. Their two games against Buffalo, while really close, obviously, one they lost, one they won. Good games by Georgia, but it was not because of their offense. It was because of Dobson just playing out of his mind. So they're still a weird team to me where, I don't know. I think they could be better than they are and also could be worse than they are. If Dobson has an off year or an off game, I think they just don't have the firepower to win that. But I mean, seeing where they ended up finishing, much better than I had originally predicted.
Yeah, and we'll probably take some of these things that we learned on predicting this kind of stuff after the first year of the unified standings into next year. So hopefully by next year, it'll at least look closer with the seedings. Like we'll still want to try to get 7 of 8 or 8 of 8 and try to get perfect here. But I think 6 of 8, the first year unified standings, not sure how all these teams are going to be making it. And we made these predictions back in November, like the middle of November. And to see 6 of 8 with all the injuries and all the trades and everything that went down and getting 6 of 8, I think is pretty stinking good. So we'll take these lessons learned from them, which is weird because I said the same thing I'd said about Halifax with Panther City. And Panther City was able to withstand them having maybe even less firepower than Calgary did. I mean, I thought Jonathan Donville stepped up. I thought Will Malcolm stepped up and Callum Crawford stepped up towards the end of the season. But middle of the season there, I was like, oh, man, what's going to happen? And, with my updated ones, I had them all the way down in 12th. And then they went on that long run because they had a very good end of the year. But like I said, we'll learn from this, and next November coming up, we'll try to knock 8 out of 8 and try to get these seedings a little bit better. But we'll move on to the Bandits predictions here. This is our last review of our bold predictions, kind of kissing the 23-24 season goodbye and start looking forward to the new season here. I'll go over mine. I had Burns scoring 40. I had Smith, Nanakoke, and Kluch all scoring 30. I had Frazier scoring 20, and then I had Buchanan, McCulley, McKay, and Dylan Robinson all scoring 10. Byrne ended up scoring 53. Frazier ended up scoring 31. Smith 33, Nanakoke 27, Kluch 30. Then you had Bucky, who scored 23, McKay 12, McCulley, who got traded, so he had 2. So on that pace, I think he played in 3 games. I would have gotten that one. Brandon Robinson, who scored 9, and Dylan Robinson, who scored 2. I think we've already discussed Dylan Robinson a lot on this one. But I missed on Byrne just having an explosion of a season. Frazier, I actually knocked him back down to 20. I bumped him up to 30, and then it was a whole mess of goals there. My next one, I had Cam Wires leading all rookies and caused turnovers and being named first team all rookie MVP. He finished tied for 3rd and caused turnovers with 20. I had Bandits will have 2 games of 20 or more goals this year. Their highest was 18. And then the one I did hit, which I'm very proud of, and I know other people have called it. I saw at least one other person call it. I said Dane Smith would finish with 100 assists. He finished with 101. So technically I was wrong, but he did finish over 100. So I'll give myself credit for that one. I think I was a bit too precise on my goals for the team. I think I was next year I'll just do an encompassing all these players will score over 20 goals or something like that, again, for the 3rd straight season or something like that. But yeah, I hit one for sure, and then a mix mosh pit of the goals for the Buffalo Bandits.
Yeah, you had a lot you had to hit within the goals. I mean, a lot of
That's what you
levels
call like a
built in.
15 leg parlay, hoping that you would hit it big and make millions, and then you never have to gamble again.
Exactly. For me, I had Chase Fraser scoring 40. He only got to 31, and he had a lot of highs and lows this year where he'd have a monster of a game and then he would disappear for multiple games in a row. So I think his hot and cold kind of season kind of sunk that, but still 31, still a pretty solid season for him. Bandits finished with the highest scoring team and then score over 250 goals. They did finish as the highest scoring team, so I was right about that. They did not get 240 goals or 50 goals. They only had 237. I mean, I blame you for that with the two games of 20 or more because they did not get that. I think if they would have gotten that, it would have been a little closer. I still don't know if they would have gotten it, but and then the Bandits will be 15-3 this year. They were 14-4 for what, 2 or 3 straight seasons. I was like, okay, they just need to win one more game. Not a big deal. I changed that to 13-5, and then they still didn't even get 13-5. They finished 11-7, their worst record in a little while. Still overall a pretty solid record. Finished 4th in the league, and they were able to have that home playoff game, which was clutch. But the bonus one I had, which I don't think was official, but I did say, was that Byrne would have a better year than Dane Smith, and he did. And that one I'm going to hold very closely. Josh, you're welcome. I assume because I called that so early, that's the reason that it happened. So you're welcome for your league MVP. You're welcome for your playoffs MVP. You're welcome for your offensive player of the year award. You're welcome for the monster year you had, all because I called it out. It was the extra push you needed to put yourself over the hump and get past your best friend Dane there and really take over. And you did by 1 point. Really crushed him. So congratulations on that. But overall, not terrible. Mine weren't as layered as yours were. I was pretty happy to have the Bandits as the highest scoring team. I think that felt really good, especially after their little bit. They finished 7th last year with all the injuries they had on the offense. So it was asking a little bit of them to get to first, but I figured if they stayed healthy, they are the most dynamic offense in the entire league, and they had a good shot to do it. And they did. So congrats to them. Their record way off. And then Fraser, like I mentioned, just hot and cold. I still think he has 40 goals in him, but we've talked about it a lot with this team as well, is that they like to spread the ball around, and they have a Dane and they have a Josh on the team. So a player like Chase, while I think he hit 40 goals is absolutely within the realm of possibility for him, and honestly, possibly even 50, with him being a supporting cast player, I don't know if we'll ever really see it unless he just has a monster go-to season. I mean, these hot and cold streaks that I mentioned aren't always his fault, right? I mean, sometimes it's just not his game to be the lead scorer, the secondary piece that they're really going to between Dane and Josh. It's like he's the 3rd or 4th option that game, and it's nothing to do with him. And he's doing other things on the offense, like getting assists or setting those picks or getting loose balls. Like, it's not that he's not contributing. He's just not the goal scorer of that game. And then he'll have games like he did against Calgary where he puts in 4, or against Albany where he puts in 5. And he just has these explosive games where they're like, all right, you're the hot stick today. We're going to go through you. And then he has other games where he's doing the other things that the offense needs him to do. So I think it's going to be tough for him to ever really get 40 because he's just not a consistent scorer. And again, it's not his fault. He has that in him, but it's just how this team and this offense kind of flows as a very selfless offense that they are.
Yeah, and I know we've said it. I think we said it on the last Monday show, which was what, 8-9 days ago, that a lot of these secondary pieces that Buffalo has in the offense, and they said it in the press conference after the championship as well, and they said it multiple times. Any of these guys could go to a different team and either be the primary guy or the secondary guy, and they're choosing to take a lesser role on the Buffalo Bandits for rings over stats. And I think that is a huge round of applause to them, because some of these players, I mean, you saw Chris Cloutier playing for North Carolina, scoring the game time or the game winner for the championship there. I mean, he could be, and he was drafted to be 2nd overall for Philly until Buffalo traded for him to be one of their core pieces for Philly. And it ended up not working out. there was a bunch of back stuff stories with all the other stuff that we don't really have to go into detail, but he came over to Buffalo and everything switched and everything clicked, being that secondary piece and, being that pick setter for Dane Smith or Josh Byrne. But I think what Buffalo has going against some of these players with the scoring 40 goals for Chase Frazier, or even getting up and over 30 for Chris Kluche, who he's finally scored 30 goals for the first time in his career here, is Buffalo has the advantage of Dane and Josh are going to get theirs. They're world-class players. They're some of the top players in the sport alone, whether it's indoor, outdoor, it doesn't matter. They're some of the top players in the league. Then you just pretty much go with who has the hot hand. That's why Chase Frazier had the 4-goal games. That's why he scored 5 goals in the game-clinching game versus Albany. That's why Chris Kluche has had 5-goal games. That's why Nanticoke had a 5-goal game in the playoffs last year or the year before. I can't remember. Bucky has big time games. They go with a hot hand, and they have the ability to do that because they're so unselfish. And I think with the goal scoring and being so precise with what I went through, it might have been a mistake because I'm not sure who has the hot hand that night. I think Josh is always going to get hit. Seeing Dane Smith get up and over 30 goals and finishing with 33 after the start that he had was unbelievable. And then for me, I think we talked about it a lot, but I'm just going to end my conversation on this is the core back on the back end there with Dylan Robinson, Zach Belter, and Cam Wires. That is going to be the core pieces. And watch, as DT already said, that there's going to be a lot of pieces that you don't want to lose in the offseason. And one of these guys that I'm talking about right now is going to be the piece that they trade out. But I think the future is so bright with those pieces back there because they're so different type of players. You went over on the last show. Zach Belter's that lockdown defender, that Zach Martin-esque, that has another edge to him, that fiery streak, and he's bigger. You got the Cam Wires, who's playing on the special teams, playing on every possession, can push the pocket a bit, and got speed in the transition game, and is not afraid to stand in front of the ball. And all those lessons that he takes from Paul Dawson, whether Paul Dawson comes back or not, is going to be shown on the field there. And then you got Dylan Robinson, who I'm going to watch more game film this offseason, but I'm really hoping that he is going to be the next step in the transition game as well. Maybe I'll call it again this offseason. Maybe I'm going to be a fool this leading into the next season as well. But those 3 pieces on the back end with, you got McKay, who's going to be 30 next year. You got Nick Weiss, who's up and over 30. You got Paul Dawson, who's up and over 30. You got Steve Priolo's up and over 30. All these pieces are slowly moving out where the offense is in their prime. When the offense is kind of tailing off and out of their prime and towards the end of their career, they're going to rely on their defense of those 3 pillars back there. Hopefully they're still around at that point to carry their offense. And I know it's a long talk down the road, but I'm so impressed with the 2022 class. And I think the biggest thing that Buffalo has to thank for that is the collapse that they showed versus Colorado in the finals that year, is where they needed to go out, they needed to fortify their defense, and they got those 3 pieces to do it. And you saw this year, they were able to rely on that defensive piece as much as they could down the stretch. I know they struggled midseason with all the injuries, but you saw it in the playoffs what this defense is capable of when you have Mad Vince and net. Again, Mad Matty Minute, whatever I call it. I'm on a tangent here, but I'm very excited to see what this defense looks like as they continue to add pieces around it or just bring back and rerun it next year.
And even just to continue to see the growth of those players. I mean, Wires this year being we've talked about it a ton. The first half of the year, he did not look good. He was a rookie playing defense in the NLL for the first time, and it showed. But his change that he was able to make, and even Belter just getting healthy, then getting into the lineup, and then him playing consistent, he will continue to change and adapt and grow his game as well. So to see these extremely young players continue to get better and better and better, I mean, if this is what they're starting at, especially Wires and Belter in their first, rookie season with the team, that they're already staples and in the playoffs when things are really important, that they're willing to trust those guys over someone like Justin Robinson, who has been playing really well for the Bandits for the last couple seasons, to have him be a healthy scratch and a great player, and to be able to trust a Belter and a Wires over him in a playoff scenario where oftentimes you're going to lean veteran experience over rookies. To see them get the trust of Johnny and the staff already as rookies, and then just to see them continue to grow as the seasons go on, it's going to be really exciting, and a good look into the future for this team to see that they have those pieces, because you want to start building them now while those other core pieces, like you said, that are starting to age out, while they're still here, you want to start bringing that next wave in if possible. And it looks like the bands are already well on their way to do that. So good to see.
Yeah, you're always trying to look to replace the present while the present is still playing, and I think they did a perfect job of that. We'll see what they do in the offseason with their 3 first-round picks and an early second-round pick. But Phil, let's dive into our second sponsor before we talk about the Buffalo Bills schedule and Mr. Sizzles.
Mr. Sizzles is currently at 346 Connecticut Street in Buffalo, New York, but they are opening 2 more locations, and the Hamburg one is coming up pretty soon. We don't have an official launch date yet, but it is getting closer and closer to them opening that location. They are currently open 7 days a week, 11 to 11, with a brunch menu on Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3.
So, Phil, I'm going to take a bit of a 90-degree turn here. We already know they have unbelievable burgers. We already know how amazing all their sandwiches are. I want to take a bit of a detour because sometimes you're not hungry for a burger. Sometimes you're not hungry for a fried chicken sandwich. Let's give some love to the nugs. You can get a 10 or a 20 piece depending on how hungry you are, or if you want to share some of those with other people. They're house-made buttermilk fried chicken bites. I'm going to pair that with some Mama's chili because, Phil, my wife, Brooke, makes an unbelievable chili, but sometimes she doesn't want to do that. And it's nice to have another option to go do that. It's topped with sour cream and chives. And I'm going to put that all down with a nice root beer float because I've been doing yard work. I've been power washing nonstop. So I deserve to be rewarded with a little bit of Mr. Sizzle's pairing right there. Phil, what do you think about my pairing? I'm kind of, I don't know if you can tell now that we're actually recording. I'm kind of drooling a little bit. It sounds delicious.
It's gross to look at you right now while we're recording.
That's a different topic, Phil.
It is. It's a good pairing, and I understand the idea about sharing, but you're not sharing those nugs if you get them 10 or 20, however many you order. You're finishing them. They are just delicious, and you're not going to want to share. I mean, the second you have a couple of them, you're going to realize that even if you originally offered to share, you're not sharing anymore. So they can figure out what else they're going to eat. I do like chili. So I like it's for me, it's more of a winter thing, but I do see where you're coming from. It's good year round. And then the root beer float sounds amazing at all times. So I'm all about root beer floats.
So you can check out their menu with all their new items on their social media sites or at MrSizzles.com. If you don't like my pairing, you can pair something else. If you do like it, let them know the BSC sent you to get that pairing. But Phil, let's dive into the Buffalo Bills schedule. It's been out for a few weeks now. I know a bunch of people beat it to death, and that's why we let it calm down. We let it all pass. Now we're going to get you with the second wave of it. It's like free agency where all the big name players signed, and then there's just this quiet period, and then the next wave comes. We're the second wave. We're the – I'm not going to – should I go with it? We're not the hurricane. We're the tsunami that follows. There you go. We're just not as horrific and catastrophic.
I don't know if those two – go together, by the way.
Earthquake, then tsunami. It's not hurricane.
There you go. You figured
it out. I figured it's the brave wavelength now that we're seeing. It's the brave lengths. There you go. But let's dive into the schedule here. Phil, as somebody who does this on the side, and we're kind of making this into a quote unquote company, this BSC thing, the first thing, and I'm not that afraid to admit it, the first thing that I thought of when I saw the schedule was, okay, one, everybody that's listening to the show already knows that I absolutely hate primetime games. I want every single game at 1 o'clock. Even the bye week, I want to start at 1 o'clock p.m. every Sunday. I don't want any Sunday night games. I don't want any Monday night games. And starting this, that was me before even this podcast started. But now that this podcast is here, I'm looking at the schedule. I'm like, okay, how does this affect when we record and put out episodes? And that's the first thing I thought. And since we're once show a week during the off season, I'm looking at this now. I'm like, yes, because they have one primetime game that might influence what we do, and it's not until week 13, December 1st. It's a Sunday night game. Everything else is front-loaded with 4 primetime games in the first 6 weeks. I'm perfectly fine with that, especially being, trying to schedule when we can record, and we don't want to record, and then a week later we're talking about a game that happened 6 days ago. I absolutely, that's my number one. And just coming from a podcaster who schedules when these get released and all that kind of stuff, that's my number one praise moment of thanking whoever. I know the names out there because Sal Capaccio and all them talk about them on his podcast, and Matt Bove talk about the schedule maker on his podcast. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, so I apologize for that. But thank you to that whole group that makes this schedule to adjust around our podcast. I'm very thankful for it, and the check is in the mail.
I assume they called you up and asked at least your opinion, not
Yeah, my phone's right
necessarily.
here. It's always on.
Yeah,
We're good.
yeah.
Yeah.
I assume they called you up and you're like, hey, this is what we were thinking about. Are there any changes you would make due to your podcast, and can we make it easier on your recording? So that was nice of them.
The only one they got us, they put the bye week 1 week too early. They should have just switched 13 and 12. Flop them so we didn't have to worry about anything.
It's true. But yeah, I mean, initial scheduling purposes, I am also right there with you. I get to work early. I wake up early. So, I'm often
That's secondary, though.
yeah. I'm in bed by like 9 though. So all these 8 o'clock games, especially when they don't start till 8:20, it's late. It's a long night. It's a long night for us, to have to do those. And luckily we don't have any. I mean, even the 4 o'clock games, if we're recording that night, we're going to have a rapid reaction to those, which is interesting. Those are always kind of fun, though. I mean, it depends on how the game went, but we can be either really heated, really calm. It's a whirlwind of emotions that go on after these rapid reaction games. There's a couple of those in there, but as far as opponents go, not great. Not a great schedule for the Bills. Strength of schedule wise, not looking great. I think this is one of those seasons to me where I think it's going to be interesting. But I feel like they're kind of the underdog finally for the first time in a long time. I mean, we know about the rebuild. We know about Diggs. We know about the team kind of taking a little bit of a step back. Overall, they're still a good team for sure. They're still going to be competitive. They still have Allen. They still have a core that they've built around, but this schedule alone looks scary, whether they were a top team or not. But I think it's going to be interesting with a tougher schedule to see them as a bit of an underdog team and how they kind of react to that. I mean, right off the bat, at Miami, are they going to be favored? I don't know. At Baltimore, are you favored in that one? Probably not. At Houston, are you favored in that one? Who knows? At the Jets, are you favored in that one? Who knows? So the first start of the season, they could just be an underdog in a lot of those games and not predicted to win. And I think that's going to be weird for the Bills, but I actually really like it because I think this, expectation of them being in the Super Bowl for the last few years, they've been a top 5, predicted team to be in the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl odds have been up there the last few years as either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've been very, very high in the Super Bowl predictions every single start of the season. And, the expectation of that goes with it. So yes, every single season you're expecting to go to the Super Bowl. You want to go to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that just because their expectations are not as high around the league that their mentality is going to change, but I think it'll help being the underdog a little bit more and get back to not being expected to essentially win out your season because you are the favored team in most of the games. This year is going to be a little bit different with the roster construction, and then looking at the schedule, it's going to be pretty tough. So I think it'll be interesting to see if they are just the not favored team a little bit more often than not in a lot of these games, and see how that changes their mentality going into the season.
Yeah, I already mentioned it. 5 primetime games. Weeks 4 through 6, they're all away. Weeks 2 through 8, 5 of the 7 are away. They got a late bye week, 8 home games, 9 away games. They got 7 games at 1 o'clock, 4 at either 4 or 4:25. They got 4 8:15 or 8:20 games. They got 1 at 7:30 and 1 TBD, which is the last game of the year. We kind of already knew who their opponents were. We just didn't really know what order they were. And looking at the front, I think Arizona is going to be an interesting game to open up to. What does Marvin Harrison Jr. look like? What does Kyler Murray look like in his first full season back from the injury? You remember last year he started on the injured reserve and slowly came back, and I only really know that because of my fantasy football team. But Miami, they're gung-ho. They just re-upped Jalen Waddle for another deal. Tua's looking for a monster deal coming up. Jacksonville, what team do they look like? Baltimore, are they going to go back to run heavy now that they got Derrick Henry, which I assume they're going to be doing? But what does Lamar Jackson look like? Houston, are they going to take another step with all the weapons they added around CJ Stroud? You got the Jets. Can Aaron Rodgers turn back time? He's already working on a foot issue, and in OTAs. Would he have rather gone for a VP candidacy rather than stay quarterback of the New York Jets? You got Tennessee all rebuild. They're calling Will Levis possibly the next Josh Allen. I don't see it, but I did see flashes that I liked of him. You got Seattle. Can Geno Smith turn back the clock and go back to the year before, not last year? You got Miami again. You got Indy, who I'm very excited to see Anthony Richardson, who had his rookie year cut short. They added pieces around him. Kansas City, rematch there, but they're finally coming to Buffalo. You got San Francisco. That one's going to be an amazing game seeing them. You got the Rams. Is Matthew Stafford still healthy at that point? Is Cooper Kupp still healthy at that point? You don't have Aaron Donald to schedule around again. Detroit, who is everybody's darling, but they're this prime team now, and they're signing all these players and to new deals. Amon St. Brown just re-up. Jared Goff's going to be around there for a while. Then you got New England 2 of the last 3 weeks. So I'm very. It was more about looking at where all these pieces matched up. I think the beginning of the schedule, traveling 5 of the first 7 weeks is going to be tough, but you end the season, 2 of the last 3 weeks are home games, which could be, if you believe in weather as a factor, which I do not whatsoever, but finishing with New England, then the Jets, and then New England again, depending on how I'm fully expecting Drake May to be playing for New England at that point, and how Sean McDermott works against rookie quarterbacks. I'm very excited to see the end of the year. It definitely is a year where the expectations are lower, like what you said, where being that Super Bowl favorite, I still think in some of the betting sites they're 4th ranked for a Super Bowl favorite
Somehow.
in those things. But think back to 2020, where yes, COVID was a whole thing and there was nobody in the stands and all that kind of stuff, but nobody was expecting them to make the run they did. They thought they were a year away. They just added Diggs. Josh Allen was finally coming into his own, second in MVP voting, but that was the year that they weren't expected to make that run, and they finished in the AFC Championship. They were a year away, and then you saw like the 3 straight years of AFC divisional rounds. So if the expectations are away from them, which I'm having them, can I still see them winning the division? 100%. I still predicting them to win the division. But am I expecting them to get back to the AFC Championship, possibly a Super Bowl run? At this moment of where the team stands right now, seeing them just on paper, I don't have them. I think this is a retool year. And next year, with all the cap money they're going to have because of the Diggs going out the door and not re-signing Davis and releasing all those players like the Mitch Morris and Jordan Poyer and so on and so forth. I think next year is going to be their next run of the secondary appearance of the Buffalo Bills. But I think this year, if they get by the divisional round, they're just playing with house money, in my opinion. I'm not expecting them to be a Super Bowl contending team throughout the year, because I think you're going to need a lot of players to step up. You're going to need Keon Coleman to step up. You're going to need, and to be one of those 1A, 1B players, you're going to need Shakir to step up. You're going to need Dalton Kincaid to be the next coming of Travis Kelce. I just don't think that there's enough pieces on the offense. And personally, I still think that Joe Brady is a big question mark, and all the eyes are going to be on him because of what we've seen since Brian Dable left for New England, or the Giants.
Yeah, looking at the schedule specifically, I think weeks 1 through 10, I think that's a big check mark. Where are you at that point? And then I think you have that gauntlet of 4 games against some pretty tough opponents with KC, San Fran, the Rams, and Detroit. And then you finish. So I would say week 10, week 15, and then see where you're at. And then you're into some big divisional games as far as like, after week 15, where are you at with the AFC East? Do you still have a shot? Do you have to win all 3 of those divisional games to take it? Not necessarily that New England's up there, but I mean, divisional losses are huge. Did you lose to a divisional opponent like Miami earlier, or the Jets earlier, where you have to win out in the
Getting
16
Miami
through 18?
done in the first 9 weeks
Yeah.
it's very crucial to get one or both those games when it comes to divisional, because you're not going
Right.
to have a makeup game later in the season.
Right. So, I mean, I think there's some breakups for sure in the season, and just kind of looking at it and where it's going to be. I mean, the bye week, like you said, a little bit later. I think with it being a tougher schedule, though, I think the other good aspect of it is it's a good test for all these players that you don't really know about, whether they're rookies or whether they're free agents that have been brought on. And there's a lot of players, even some of the ones that did well last year. It's, can they continue that and step up again this year? And like you mentioned, with it being a rebuild year, it definitely is for sure. And I think this is a big statement year for a lot of these individual players. Like, can you step up in this tougher schedule and this tougher situation and still make that big of an impact. And if they, fail to step up to that reputation, then maybe you have a bigger question mark on some of these players headed into next off season. And if you're, have the cap space, have the draft capital to replace some of them, maybe some of the fringe players this year are pretty much fighting for a roster spot for their future, which is kind of true at all times, but especially true in a team that's in the middle of a rebuild. I mean, they're looking at some of these younger guys to step up and be the kind of anchors of this team for the future. And some of them might step up and some of them might kind of fall away and they might be gone by next season. So overall, not terrible, but not good. But I mean, for us, the lack of prime time is fantastic.
But that pretty much closes out what this first off-season show is all about. We cover the Mad Matty Minute. We covered the bold predictions that we got right, the ones that we got wrong. Matt Vince, I'll be over there as soon as you confirm you're back, cleaning up the yard or the litter box or whatever it is. We went over our bold predictions, what we got right, what we got wrong. We went over the Bills schedule. Phil, is there anything else you would like to add to this first episode, seeing each other since the one we had where we were in person, but otherwise we've never seen each other recording these, before we shut it down for a whole week till we're back next Wednesday?
Allergies are killing me right now. So that's been a struggle, but for the most part, I don't know if we changed too much from being able to see each other. It changed a little bit. I think it's going to take some time to get used to it in general. I'm still looking at my notes most of the time and not really paying all that much attention to much else, but, we'll see. I think for the first test, it went well, and you didn't abuse the soundboard too much, other than early on. So that's positive, but I still don't trust you. I think I'm going to be on edge at all times for all episodes now.
Yeah, I was looking through which ones, because you can behind the scenes stuff. We'll give you a look behind the scenes. There are so many different options I can look at right here. Like there's cheering, drum roll, clapping, and I can add more to it. So we'll see what happens. I got a whole week to play with this, Phil. Like I said, there's going to be things that we're working on during the show, what works, what doesn't. So you're going to have to stick with us. Think of this as like the first month or two that you're seeing us on YouTube once again, where we're working through all the fine-tuned kinks. That's why we did this in the offseason. We didn't want to do it when the Buffalo Bandits were in the championship run, trying to finagle what to do here. That's why we kind of just both said, let's wait until the offseason. We can work out the kinks there. But yeah, there's a lot of other stuff that we can add to this. The interviews are a big part of this, but we're still just fine-tuning. We're switching over how we're uploading and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see what worked, what didn't after the first episode, and kind of revisit it, and we'll kind of work out the kinks as we always do. So that pretty much wraps up this episode. We got a ton of topics that we're going to be talking about in the offseason. Phil and I are going to be commissioners for the day again. We're going to be talking about what improvements the league can make, what improvements the Buffalo Bandits can make. We'll give league report cards for all these teams for the past year and where we think they're going to go in free agency. We got all the players that are going to be possibly reaching free agency and what players Buffalo Bandits might be targeting in free agency. The new TV deal, because ESPN and TSN Plus are both up. So we'll find out what the inner workings of that are going to be. Hopefully there's another step in the right direction, because PLL is on ABC all the time. Why can't the NLL? So we'll talk about that long off season and keep talking about, once again, still the only podcast talking Buffalo Bandits action all year long. So thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. We'll be back next Wednesday and every Wednesday until next December, or a little bit before then, with these episodes. Thank you to Tap That Tap Room and Mr. Sizzles for sponsoring this episode and this show. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Check out our website app, or check out our store on our link tree and on our socials at the shop tab on our website. Follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you leave us a review on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, bye-bye.